not an issue.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this online session on the second part on inferential statistics on the JUMP software. Again, we welcome and thank Dr. training all of us on this software. I really enjoyed the previous session, Mr. Muralidhar, and thanks so much. It was, I think it's absolutely useful for anyone who wants to do analysis and publish papers. So, and it is very simple, I felt. Because once we know how to do it, it is not to this session, and I hope this can interest more people in wishing a useful learning session. Best wishes, all of. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Dr. Radhe, will you take it forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr.
Thank you
Radhe,
so much.
can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am, for this introductory remarks. We'll now carry forward with the program. Over to Mr. Muralidhar. Sir, we can start off today's session.
Thank you so much, Professor. So assume that I'm audible, and then I'll share the screen to start with. Okay.
Yeah,
so
you are audible.
I don't think so. You need to see me. You need to see most JUMP, and then you have to do actually hands-on. Some of you might. I see that you have started dialing through your mobile. Probably it might be a little difficult for you to follow it because we'll be doing hands-on. As mentioned, it's going to be hands-on, and I request you to dial back to your system computer so that you can see, and we shared the data set as well. Let me start sharing the screen now. Ta-da-da. Share. There you go. Screen. Yeah. So I think you can see my screen now.
Yes, sir, we can see the screen.
Thank you so much. So just to the way it's going to be today is we're going to do a lot many things. I think and then important things. It's most important is even if we do three things, it should be important. We should carry back some productive learning through this workshop. So we're going to talk about a little bit of inferential statistics. I assume that all of you are aware of what is inferential statistics, but I'll share my learnings. Okay, so I've been working in this space for a while. I thought the way I've been taught or else have been learned, I've applied in industry. I'll share a couple of my thoughts from a concept standpoint, and then we'll do test of normality. It's very important when we do inferential statistics. We have to check the distribution of the data, and one of the famous distribution is the normal distribution, Gaussian distribution. So, and most frequently used by, or it can be, all your results can be generalized if your data follows a normal distribution. And then we'll try to do a couple of t-tests. There are varieties of t-test. We'll talk about it, and then we'll do chi-square, and then we'll try to do ANOVA. And in chi-square, we'll try to cover relative risk and odds ratio as well. And ANOVA, I know very important component. And I also see that when it comes to ANOVA, there are particular requirements of ANOVA. We call it as a post-hoc in your terminologies, or else we call it as a Welch test also. It should be equal variances and all those things. Most of the times I've seen in my area, that means in management sciences, they won't teach Welch test and all, but in medical sciences or health sciences, it's an absolute need. I've seen some of the papers where they'll ask, hey, whether your distribution is normal or not. If not, what kind of an analysis you can, interpretation you can do. So very important. So today is going to be a little more interesting, and we'll take good examples, and we'll try to do that also. So please open your JUMP desktop, and then we'll continue. So to start with, my request remains same. Okay, it's going to be hands-on training. and I always get the pleasure of doing in the second half of the day, which is I feel a little challenging. So, but we'll get through it. We'll make it interesting. It's because it's a workshop, and then we'll use the mouse. Always keep that in mind. There is something called mouse. We can use it and ask the questions. Never give up. It's easy to give up when it comes to statistical data analysis, but it's just a matter of time. I always say that I'm an experienced monkey. It's just a couple of hours I practiced and I'm teaching you people, but you can do much more than what I can do. Okay, so it's just that never give up. If you want me to go back and then show, you want me to show again, I can do that. No issues. And assume that it's being recorded also, Professor. Yeah. So just to recap on what the kind of
Being recorded,
variables.
sir.
Yeah.
The session
So
is being recorded.
So what I'm trying to say is just to recap kind of variables are the data types. We learned about nominal and ordinal. Okay, so nominal and ordinal, I combine them as categorical variables. You know, your gender, blood type, okay, pass or fail, okay, disease levels. So all those things are called, I call it as one word is categorical variable. Another thing is your continuous variable, your blood pressure, height and weight, body mass index, salary is a continuous variable. In fact, salary is a continuously constant variable. I call it as, okay. It never increases only. Accordingly, so you see that if you have categorical variables, what you can do is counts, frequencies, proportions, and percentages you can do. If you have continuous variable, you can do mean, median, mode, all those things. So if you have a categorical variables, you describe those variables using counts, percentage, proportion. For example, there are 40% female patients, 60% male patients. So that's the percentages because gender is a categorical variable. Similarly, if you look at the continuous variable, you describe them using a average weight of this person, average blood pressure of the entire group. So you will get little more flexibility. At the same time, the metrics are different according to it, right? So this is called descriptive statistics. You describe the variables, mean, median, mode, proportion, standard deviation, standard error, coefficient of variance, percentage, proportion, all those things are you're describing the variable, whether it is a continuous variable or a categorical variable. And that's why it is called descriptive. It's a descriptive statistics. Now, the topic for today is inferential statistics, right? So then the question comes, once you describe it, why, what you're going to do with this, why inferential statistics? So you describe only as based on the sample data. So you will not get that opportunity to go and then collect all the data from the population, right? So you won't get that, you won't have resources. So you look at the sample statistic and infer on the population. So if you exactly look what is the dictionary meaning of infer, so it means to derive by reasoning or conclude or judge from the premises or the evidence. That's the kind of dictionary meaning it has. Okay. So what we're going to infer on the population based on the descriptions of the sample statistics. We call it as, for population, it's called population parameter. So looking at the statistics of sample, we infer on the parameter of the population. So normally we use the induction and deduction technique. So we apply on our premises and assumptions and evaluate the evidence of the data. So that's why inferential statistics. As I said, in medical population, in medical sciences, sorry, most of the population that you might want to study are so large that it would be impossible to obtain results from every member of the population. So consequently, doctors must resort to taking samples from the population, and which could be representative of your population, and based on that you infer on the population. So that's why inferential statistics. So what you infer, if it is a continuous variable, infer on the continuous variable statistics, mean, median, mode, you can infer. If it is a categorical variable, you infer on the proportions. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do test of means and test of frequencies and proportions. So if it is a continuous variable, we'll do test of means, and we'll start comparing groups and we'll talk about it. And if it is a categorical variable we want to infer, so we'll infer on the proportions and frequencies. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to infer on the using the sample statistics, we're going to infer on the population parameter. I've introduced you two words. If mean of a sample, it is called a statistic. If mean of the population is called a parameter. Okay, so both of them are mean. We always call any statistics related or any descriptive statistics related to sample, it is called sample statistics, and anything which related to population is called population parameter. So inferential statistics is all about inferring on the population parameters based on your sample statistic. Any question here? I just want to refresh this very important concept of that's why we study in descriptive statistics first, and then we move on to inferential statistics. Good to go, JTG? That's the word. Okay, so I'll wait for you to say any questions, any clarifications here. Okay, let's refresh some of the basics of inferential statistics before actually we go ahead and do it. Okay, I'll start putting some words here. I want you to explain if possible. Okay, so the first thing which is related to inferential statistics is checking the distribution, whether it is normal or not. Very important. If it is normal, then we can apply parametric tests. Okay, if it is not normal, we cannot apply parametric, we'll apply non-parametric test. Very important. We'll not get into what is normal distribution and all. So essentially it's a continuous probability distribution. It is called Gaussian distribution as well. So it's a continuous probability distribution. That means you only check whether it is normal or not for a continuous variable. Simple. So if the variable is continuous, then you can check, okay, whether it is it's a normally distributed or not. If it is not a continuous variable, you cannot check for normality. Logically, it's so if you have any variable, if you're trying to do test of hypothesis on a variable which is not normal or which is not continuous, you cannot do parametric test. That's why we have non-parametric. What if the variable is not normal? Then we apply non-parametric test. So most of the variables in life are also expected to be normally distributed, but we have to check before applying any of the parametric test. So all t-test, z-test, ANOVA, every test assumes that the data is normally distributed. If not, then you have to apply non-parametric test. Okay. So for example, birth weight of babies is mostly normally distributed. Distribution of blood pressure of men, if you look at that, it is also normally distributed. So if your population is big enough, we assume that it is the sample data is normally distributed. That's how it is. We assume it is the foundation for inferential statistics. It's a more powerful inferential method. Okay, and it frequently assumes a distribution to be normal. So that's what we normally assume, but we have to validate. So we're going to understand how to validate, how to check whether data, continuous data is normally distributed or not. Then only we can apply. Okay, then only we can apply all some of the parametric tests which we are going to do today. Okay, and then another concept is we call it as NHST, null hypothesis significance testing. Anybody talk about does anybody can throw light on this? So if you look at the dictionary, what do you mean by null? This is simple. So it means without effect or without any value. That's called null. And so in test of hypothesis context, null hypothesis means no difference, no effect, no consequence, no significance. So that's the null hypothesis. There is no difference between population, no relationship between variables. The intervention does not make a difference, or the effect does not make any difference. There's no effect. Okay, so that's the null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is the populations are different. There is a relationship between two variables. There is an intervention which has an effect. Your drug has an impact on the disease progression. So that's an alternate hypothesis. We call it as research hypothesis also. Okay, so null hypothesis represented by H naught, and alternate hypothesis represented by H1. So we always call it's called NHST, you know, that's the acronym. So we always want to disapprove or else challenge the null hypothesis. That's the reason we are trying to. Okay, So no difference, no change is what we look at null. It's kind of boring, right? So, so it's kind of null means boring sometimes. It's usually what scientists hopes to reject. All the doctors want to reject null hypothesis. Everybody wants to. They always want to prove that there is an evidence, that there is an effect. Especially in medical science, you want to find some evidence that the drug has an impact on particular disease. Okay, that's the null hypothesis. Okay. Effect of no interest or no effect is null hypothesis, and alternate / research hypothesis. Any question here? So we always keep that NHST in mind. Okay. Any doubt? And then we talk about confidence interval. It's a descriptive statistical measure which gives you a range. Okay, if mean is around 35, what is your confidence interval? Means around 30 to 40 with a 95% confidence. I can say that. Okay. What is that confidence level? The true value of the mean lies in that. That's where confidence interval. It's very important that you understand confidence interval. So if we were to measure the same sample size of 100 people, and 95% of the times we might reach the true mean. Probably that's how I interpret as. So simple as that. So where is the range from a confidence standpoint? That's the confidence interval. So CI indicates the range in which we are 95% confident that our so-called height or a weight can be found with 95%, typically 95% confidence level. Keep that in mind. Very important. Whenever you get a metric, you also look at the confidence interval. Okay. And then important is p-value. Can somebody help me out? What is p-value? Layman's language. Now I'm going to put you on spot. So everybody talks about p-value. Let's try to understand. I'm going to take 10 more minutes. That's it. 5 more minutes. We'll wind up the theoretical aspects of it, because it's very important to understand theoretical aspects before we get into the hands-on. What is p-value? Any idea? Any idea about what is p-value? Am I audible? So it should not sound like a recorded video for you people. Okay, so that's the
It's
reason.
audible, sir. You're
Yeah.
audible.
So can
It's audible.
somebody help me out? How do you interpret p-value? Because without this, there's no meaning doing inferential statistics, right? But this is what I. So it's the probability that you mistakenly rejected a true null hypothesis. Okay, so I'll come back to that. What is type 1 error and type 2 error in a couple of seconds. So how do you interpret from a layman's perspective? Okay, so this is very important. I think statistically you can search as many as definitions as possible. Okay, so how we going to interpret? We say that there is a statistical significant difference in reject null hypothesis. Okay, one way to remember is if p value is low, the null must go. Keep this in mind. If p is low, null must go. Null hypothesis should go out. If p is low, null must go. Keep this in mind. This is what professor taught me. Okay, if p is low, null must go. So anything, if you get a p value less than 0.05, then null should go, means you reject the null hypothesis. Okay, so statistically speaking, we don't use the word reject null hypothesis. We fail to accept null hypothesis. That's how the double negative, they use it in stats. We'll talk about that as an axiom also. We'll talk about. So the maximum probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis or a true hypothesis is what I'm going to accept as a 5%. That's how you talk about is how much error you can allow in your decision making. 5%. So if you get less than 0.05, kind of, that means that's a the null must go. That means you have a significant effect. That's how we prove it. Probability that you mistakenly rejected a true null hypothesis is a p-value. Okay, so keep that in mind. If p is low, null should go. Okay, so there's one more axiom. Whenever I talk about inferential statistics, We always say that accept null hypothesis or reject null hypothesis, not the right word we use it. Okay. We say that failing to reject the null hypothesis is the what we use the word. We never say that, okay, failing to reject accept null hypothesis only, actually it is. But at this context, with the evidence what I have is what I'm trying to reject or failing to reject or failing to accept. So keep that in mind. It's not that, so the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. That's the statement in inference statistics. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So with the data, I'm failing to accept or failing to reject. It doesn't mean what is the reality. It could be different also. But whatever, based on the data what I have, I'm taking this decision. There could be error in my decision also. Okay. So keep that in mind. And then tails, we call it as two tail and one tail. Okay. So if you're looking at A is not equal to B, then it is called two tail test. A is greater than B is called one tail or a so-called right tail. And then left tail is A smaller than B. So that's a left tail test. So normally in jump, you need not worry about it. Jump will give you all the three results. Okay. It give you p-value for all three types of tests, two tail test or one tail test in each of the directions, that is left tail or right tail. So you need not define in the beginning what kind of tail test you are doing. So just do it. Jump will throw you all the p-value related to each of the tails. Last but not the least, errors. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, so this is where on the left side, you have null hypothesis. This is the truth or reality. Okay? In reality, null hypothesis is true. That means there is no effect. In reality, there could be null hypothesis could be false. That means there is an effect of so-called drug on particular disease. Null hypothesis is true. Null hypothesis is false. In reality, this is the absolute truth or reality. Okay? That means no effect exists. There is an effect exists. That is the reality. But based on data, you would have concluded in two type, right? You would have accepted the null hypothesis. That means in reality, there is no effect. Your decision is also no effect. Okay. That means if in reality, no effect, your decision also no effect, that means no error. You have taken the right decision. This is very important slide. Keep that in mind. In reality, no effect. Your decision also says no effect. That means all life is beautiful. You have taken the right decision. But the reality says that no, there is an effect. And you also said that there is an effect. You rejected the null hypothesis based on your data. There also you took a right decision. That means no error. Correct conclusion you came to. So in these two cases, okay, accepting a null hypothesis when is actually true, it's a correct decision. Rejecting null hypothesis when it is actually false is a correct decision. But there comes when it is actually true, that means there is no effect exist, then your conclusion saying that there is an effect of the drug on the disease. That's called type 1 error. And then is the other way is type 2 error. That means you are accepting the null hypothesis. Okay. That means there is no effect. Even then there is an effect. So there is a type 1 error, type 2 error. If I take an example, probably you'll understand better here. Okay. So I have a couple of examples here. Okay. So let's look at the type 1 error. Convicting an innocent person is a type 1 error. Denying boarding to a safe passenger is a type 1 error. Telling a patient that they have a cancer when they actually do not have cancer is a type 1 error. Making a process change when it is not at all required is a type 1 error. Look at the type 2 errors. Set a guilty person free. Missing a patient's cancer is a type 2 error. Okay. Allow a dangerous passenger to board. Fail to make a needed process change. Approve an ineffective drug. Okay. Looking at this, you might all think, hey, type 2 error is most dangerous, right? Which one is the most dangerous error, type 1 or type 2? Think about it. Just think about it. Which one is which is the most dangerous error, type 1 or type 2? Hey, there is only two options. Either you can say you can make a type 1 error or type 2 error when you make the answer also. When you answer also. Think about it. Hello? Hey, am I audible? This is something which I keep asking every time. Looks like I've lost the connection.
Audible, sir.
Okay, so I asked a question, which one you think as a doctor is the most dangerous error? I think I need some moral support. Please understand. I understand your pain of sitting in the second half of the day, but at least a few people should be kind of participating in the conversation. Or else it looks like I'm playing a recorded video, which I can always do that. Please help me out. We want to make it a little interactive. There should be some difference, right, between a workshop and a news reading. So I'm not doing a news reading. Please help me out.
Type 1, I think.
So you don't mind. So type 1 is the most dangerous according to you, deny boarding to a safe passenger, but you can allow a dangerous passenger to board. Okay. So telling a patient that you have a cancer when they do not, but that is most dangerous than missing a patient's cancer. That's what you think. So again, this is where consumers and suppliers perspective comes into the picture. So if you're on the other side of it, probably I feel very bad that and dangerous. I don't mind uh, denying me a boarding into a aircraft, but if they allow a dangerous passenger to board, that's absolutely catastrophic. So again, I'm not saying that whether type 1 is good, type 2 error is good. From a manufacturer perspective, it's different. From a consumer perspective, it's a different. From a doctor perspective, it's a different. From a patient perspective, it is little different. So it depends on the context. Is that what I felt? And both the errors are equally dangerous. Okay, equally dangerous. It's just that who is the person who is on the other side. So just letting you know. So before that, that's the context. What we're talking about, the inferential statistics. These are the things I thought I should be sharing. Now let's get into the t-test. Okay, so now that you have all the data set, so just to sum it up, your type 1 error, type 2 error. Okay, so what is type 1 error is sort of just like a doctor telling a male patient that he's a pregnant is a type 1 error. Okay, so I don't know the nuances of advances in medical sciences for a management guy like me. So I feel that type 1 error is a doctor telling a male patient that he's a pregnant is a type 1 error. Type 2 error could be seeing an obvious female pregnant, seeing an obvious female pregnant and saying her, hey, you are not a pregnant. That's a type 2 error. So that's how I look at type 1 error and type 2 error. Yeah, in this context, it depends on who is on the other side again, which is most impactful from error standpoint. So that's how I remember type 1 error is telling a male patient that he is pregnant. Type 2 error is obvious female pregnant and then going to her and telling you're not pregnant. That's how it differentiates. Okay, let's talk about the t-test. Any questions on the inferential statistics? Okay, type 1, type 2 error, and then p-value. Okay, we normally look at 95% as the significant confidence level, and that's why 5% is what we are looking at a significance level. We'll always look at 5% from a p-value. If it is less than 0.05, which is nothing but 5%, we reject the null hypothesis or fail to accept the null hypothesis. Okay, so let's get on to the t-test. Some of the tests which you normally use and frequently use is t-test. T-test has three varieties. I call it as flavors. One is a one sample t-test. It is also called student's t-test. And there'll be only one variable. There's only one variable. By the way, t-test is a continuous variable. You can apply it to a continuous variable. Here, the variable is continuous. It is The purpose is to decide if the population mean is equal to a specified value or not. We'll take an example. Example, the mean heart rate of a group of people is equal to 65 or not. So I want to check, I have a sample of heart rates. I want to check whether it is the average is 65 or not, because I learned that 65 is the average of the population. Okay, and the important assumption is the distribution has to be normal. The value or the heart rate values, the entire distribution has to be normal. You have to check if it is normally distributed, then only we have to go and do a t-test, or else we have to do a non-parametric test. All these things are parametric test and non-parametric test in inferential statistics. So for everything we have a non-parametric test if the distribution is not normal. And second one is called two sample test. It is also called as independent group test, independent samples t-test, equal variance t-test, pool t-test, unequal variance. All these terminologies people use. It's nothing but two sample t-test. So you'll have two variables here. Okay, one is, for example, heart rate. Okay, and then we'll have groups between male and female. Okay, so there'll be one continuous variable and another categorical variable to define groups. I want to check the mean heart rate for male and female or same or not. That's the two sample t-test. Okay, so that's the two sample t-test. If you start looking at differentiating between two groups, mean heart rate between male and female, whether same or not, again the requirement is distribution has to be normal. We have to check that. If not, we cannot apply a t-test. We have to apply non-parametric test. Third one is called paired t-test. A paired t-test, it is also called paired group t-test, dependent sample t-test. It's also called repeated sample t-test. So people use many names for paired t-test. Again, here also you have two variables. One is a continuous variable, another one is a categorical variable, just to define the pairing within the groups. Sometimes you'll have two continuous variables also. Here the goal is to check whether is there any difference between the paired measurements for a particular population, or if the difference between paired measurements is zero or not, essentially speaking. The same example continuation, mean difference in the heart rate for a group of people before exercise and after exercise is zero or not. That means there is no impact of exercise, okay, on the heart rate. You want to do that for, because you'll be doing the measurements on the same people, right? Paired t-test, that's called. Again, here also the requirement is normal distribution. So if the data is distributed normally, you have continuous variable, then only you can do pair t-test or this particular t-test. Now the question is, what if there are more than two groups? We talked about two sample t-test, right? You'll have male and female. What if there are more than two groups? That becomes ANOVA. If the number of groups are more than two, you will be entering to ANOVA. So ANOVA and t-test, more or less both of them are same, because you will be measuring the means only, test of means only, both of them. It's just that in t-test or two sample t-test, you have only two samples or two groups. If you have more than two groups, you will do ANOVA. Simple as that. Okay. Again, for all these things, one requirement is the distribution has to be normal. If it is not normal, then we will do a non-parametric test called Wilcoxon sign rank test. Yeah, and sign test for pair t-test is called sign test. So we'll do that. First thing is you have to check whether the distribution is normal or not. Then only we can do t-test. Keep that in mind. Okay, t-test or ANOVA, you should check whether data is normally distributed or not. Then only. It's called post hoc. You always do that. Validating the assumptions of ANOVA or a t-test is most important. People assume that data is normally distributed and they have applied t-test. I've seen most of the cases, but you submit to your journals, probably you'll get a response saying that, hey, can you tell me whether data is normally distributed or not? Can you do a test to check whether it is normally distributed or not? So before going ahead and then doing test of hypothesis, we have to check the distribution, whether it is normal or not. If normal, parametric. No, non-parametric. Okay, good to go. Okay, let's take an example. Okay, so you have the analgesic data with you. You have analgesic data. Hopefully you can see my screen here. The project extend, it has to be extended something. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. I'm just moving it out. So open the data set called analgesics. Can you hear me? Was there any question in the chat box? Type 2 error, somebody has typed. Okay, sorry, I just saw that. How many of you opened the data set? I need some response, please. Open the data set called analgesic, which has been shared with you. Hey, can't they unmute themselves if they want to speak yes or no? Two, three, four, okay, five, six. Okay, I can see that only 5 people can open the data set. Rest of them are all dialed in through mobile. Okay, let me do my own analytics here. So those who have dialed in through a system, please open the data set. Hey, can anybody share their screen and then open the data set? I'll start explaining and then so that we can do it. I want someone to volunteer and then share the screen so that I'll show you how to do it. The first thing is we have to check for the normality of the data. So I'll show you how to do that and jump and voluntarily one of you can share the screen. So here, open the analgesic drug, analgesics data. If you open that, can somebody do it for me? Okay, they can unmute themselves, but now nobody is sharing the screen. Hey, I stopped sharing the screen. Can somebody please? Let me do. Okay, so I'll show you how to check the norm. So first thing is analyze. Something called distribution. And then we are trying to check whether pain is normally distributed or not. First question we're going to answer is whether the data is normally distributed or not. The continuous variable is normally distributed or not. So I'll drag and drop pain here, Y columns, and I want only histogram only, or else you click or doesn't make any difference. So you will get something like this. Okay, so this is what the pain, this is a histogram. It'll give you summary statistics as well. And if you see, it gives me mean, standard deviation. This is the limits, 95% confidence interval for the mean. Okay, so the average is around 8.5, and then the confidence limit is between 9 and 7.3. And customize summary statistics. If you click that red triangle, you can see other statistics as well. Kurtosis, maximum, minimum, range, all those things. Let me select few of them. Minimum, maximum, median, mode, kurtosis, skewness, okay, all those things, whichever you want to explore. So you'll get the summary statistics here. Now that I want to check whether a pane is normally distributed or not. The first thing we do it to check whether pane is normally distributed is, first thing is check for normal quantile plot. So under the red triangle, for normal quantile. So how many of you got this normal quantile plot? I'll wait till here, or else you want me to repeat, I'll repeat. Okay, please respond. It becomes little uncomfortable for me if nobody is speaking. Okay, so I definitely hate myself if nobody is speaking. Hopefully you understand that, right? Especially for training and online training, it makes very difficult if nobody is responding, because you never get what you're trying to do, whether people are getting it or not, whether network is right or wrong. Okay, so please do respond.
So yes, sir, this is Dr. Akshay. You got his graph, sir.
You got this graph? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that response. So once you get this, you just look at this. This is how first visually see whether the data is normally distributed or not. Okay, so if your points are within this so-called the dotted lines, we call it as Lilly force region. Okay, this is the Lilly force region. More or less you define, okay, assume that the data is normally distributed. Okay, the first is visually approaching it. And then is now you try to put a distribution to it and then do a goodness of it. So in your research papers, mostly they will ask for Shapiro-Wilk. Okay, that's the test you have to do to check whether the data is normally distributed or not. There's another test called Anderson-Darling. Either you can apply Shapiro-Wilk or Anderson-Darling. Okay, so any of these tests you can apply to check whether data is normally distributed. So go to the red triangle of pane. Okay, under the pane, click, there is something called continuous fit and fit normal. Okay, you click fit normal, something like this you will get fitted normal distribution. You can also see a green color line where it looks like it tries to fit what is the distribution, but more or less it looks like a normal distribution for us. Okay, and then it gives you a little bit of estimates, and then the location and the dispersion, the central tendance mean, and then the standard deviation. It will give you fitted normal distribution parameters. Don't worry about it here. So it gives you a lot of output. What we are looking at is second is, hey, looks like normal distribution, but finally we're going to do a goodness of fit. Okay. Again, under the red triangle here, fitted normal distribution, go to goodness of fit here. Then you will get Shapiro-Wilk test. So if the P value is greater than 0.05, that means the data is normally distributed. Look at the P value here. If the P value is greater than 0.05, the data is normally distributed. What do you think? What is the P value here for Shapiro-Wilk test? What is the P value? 0.24. So it is, and then that means your pane data is normally distributed. And if you want to save this, go here, save script, save to the data table. And then say distribution of pane, close. Where you will find, you can see here, when you close that analysis, you have already saved the output, whatever your analysis you did here. It comes as a saved script here on the left column. Okay. Saved script on the left side of the column. So first thing is check whether data is normally distributed. Any doubt here checking? So what we have to do is, this is what we exactly did, checking for normal distribution. We went to analyze distribution. Y is equal to pain. Okay. Under the red triangle, choose normal quantile plot. If you see that the dotted, that the data points are within the Lilly force region, then more or less visually you can understand the pay. It is normally distributed, but it doesn't stop here. You have to fit a distribution and check for goodness of fit. Okay. Shapiro-Wilk or Anderson-Darling test, we're going to do it. If the p-value is greater than 0.05, then data is normally distributed. The null hypothesis here is sample taken from normal distribution. Sample taken from the non-normal distribution is your research hypothesis or the alternate hypothesis. So as we say, if p-value is greater than 0.05, it's a data sample taken from a normally distributed. For a layman perspective, pain is normally distributed. So then only we can do all sorts of t-test here, or ANOVA, t-test, whatever you want to do. You have to check whether data is normally distributed. Any question here? How to do, how to check whether the data is normally distributed or not?
No, sir.
Thank you so much. Okay. Next is, first we did for the normality. Okay. So you can do Anderson-Darling test also. Okay. So which is kind of, it is a modification of Kolmogorov-Smirnov. Okay, there is a KS test also, but Shapiro-Wilk is, if the data set is less than 2000, you use Shapiro-Wilk, or else use the Anderson-Darling test. Anderson-Darling is little more robust. I normally prefer Shapiro-Wilk or else Anderson-Darling test. You can see which of them, whichever. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is one sample t-test. Okay, is the calculated mean of pain being statistically different from 9.1? Okay, calculated mean of pain being statistically different from 9.1. That's the question. It's a one sample t-test we are trying to do. Yeah, now I request someone to share the screen so that I'll help you out, or else I'll do it end of the day, but I want you also to do so that I can guide you easily. This is where I also get a little more confirmation that some of you are actually having jump. Okay. So please, anybody can share the screen. Well, I'll stop sharing it and I'll help you out. The first question is we're doing one sample t-test. Question is the calculated mean of pain being statistically different from 9.1? This question is average of pain is different from 9.1 or not? Because I assume that the population has a 9.1. I want to test that, validate that using test of hypothesis using one sample t-test. Go. So can somebody share the screen to me? I'm going to help you. Don't worry. Not putting you on spot. Please share the screen. Sir, participants can share the screen, right? Yeah, please. Yeah, please do share. We are trying to do a one sample t-test. I will help you out. Not a problem.
Mike.
Just share the screen. You can listen to me and then do. As I said, it's hands on. Please do. Please do. See, I can do easily. I'm telling you, I'll show that in a couple of seconds, quick seconds, but I want you to do hands on along with me. That's the goal. Don't think that I'm putting you on spot.
Dr. Akshay is sharing the screen. And
Thank you so much, Dr. Akshay. I owe you a chocolate now. Okay. Please. Thank you so much. Are you sharing the screen, Dr. Akshay?
Yes, he's doing that.
Yes, sir. Just trying to figure out how.
ಟೀಚರ್ ನೀವು ಅಕ್ಷಯ್ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಟಿರ್ಬೇಕು ಯಾವುದಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಕ್ಷಯ್
ಆಯ್ತಾ?
Screen share ಮಾಡಬೇಕು.
So if that's not possible, then we'll roll back. That's it.
ಮಾಡಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಸರಿ ಈಗ ಮಾಡಿ ಈಗ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಕ್ಷಯಿಂದ ಎರಡು ಕಡೆ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಇವನ್ ಪ್ರಿವಿಲೇಜ್ ಇಲ್ಲ.
Okay, looks like Akshay is having little trouble there. Okay, thank you so much, Akshay. So just show me how do you check the normal distribution. From there, I'll take it up on the t-test. The goal is to check whether is 9.1 is statistically significant or not. That's the one sample t-test we're trying to do. So just do the normality check. Check whether pain is normally distributed or not.
Yes, sir.
Reality, pain is not normal always. You can tell me more than anyone. Yeah. So yeah, go for the thank you so much. That was too quick. Yeah. Normal quantile plot, doctor. Under the pain, click normal quantile plot. Mota-moti looks like normally distributed. Try to fit a continuous distribution. Amazing. You can fit any distribution. Now we are looking at normality. Under the fitted normal distribution, red triangle, you check for goodness of it. Okay. So then p-value is less than 0.0, more than 0.05. That means life is beautiful, pain is normal. Okay. So that's how we're going to interpret. So now that pain is normal, the next test is keep that. Okay. So now that because it is normal, we can apply one sample t-test. Okay. So if not, we have to apply a non-parametric test. So go under the red triangle pain red triangle. Under the pain red triangle, we want to test the mean. Okay, you can test anything in the inferential statistics world. Test mean. Click the test mean. Under the red triangle, you can see the test mean. So what is my hypothesized mean is 9.1. I want to test against 9.1. Type 9.1 there. Okay. So if you have a true standard deviation, you can type or else leave it off because t-test and z-test as a number of sample size increases, both of them are same. Okay. It works on the degrees of freedom. If in case your data is non-normal, then you have to apply Wilcoxon sign rank test. In our case, it is normal, so it's okay. You can test the mean. Is a normal distribution only. Click OK. Click OK, sir. Thank you, doctor. So now look at the p-value. Look at the p-value. What is the p-value? And the t-test, you come down. P-value is greater than 0.05 or less than 0.05?
Greater than.
So if it is greater than 0.05, that means there is no statistical significant difference between the average actual estimate of 8.5 and 9.1. There is hardly any significant difference. Simple. Test of no significance. If you want to quickly check, is there any significant, go to the pain again, and then you want to quickly check whether 7.1 is statistically significant or not. Go to the pain again. You can continue to do as many as you need not go back. Your test mean. Put instead of 9.1, you test for 7.1. Let's try to do it. Let's see what is the answer. Now look at the p-value here. It is less than 0.05 or greater than 0.05.
Less than 0.05.
Means what? How do you conclude?
So
There is a difference.
There is a statistically significant difference between the hypothesized value and the actual estimate. Simple, straightforward answer. See, best part is if it is in red color, automatically, so if the value is less than 0.05, jump will show in red color. because that's how it has been positioned also. So you just need to look at the color of the p-value and then see if it is red means lambda. Okay, red means problem, that means there is an effect. This is how it is for a layman perspective. You want to save this, you save everything as a distribution. Go to the distribution, save everything. So one sample t-test is done. This is how you do. If it is not normal, you use a Wilcoxon rank test to the data table. Yeah, data table, use it as a script, and then you want to see the output, you can do it. There are a few things which I thought of showing you. Probably at the end of the session, I'll show you. If you're a teacher, there are a lot many good things here. Okay, all of your teachers. Go to the t-test red triangle, test mean red triangle, test mean red triangle. Yeah, there is a p-value animation. Click, professor. Yeah, so if you're a teacher, you can show this to student. Keep changing the values, automatically your p-value or t-ratio will change. There, use that small black color square, right? Put the mouse there and start dragging and dropping here. Start moving that. Okay, that means your right side. Huh. So look at this. What if you change the values? What happens to your p-value and then decision threshold or decision criteria? Okay, so it's very important from a teaching perspective. Hey, what if you change the standard deviation? What happens? You can use this on the left side, keep changing and see what happens to the p-value. Look at the test parameters on the left side. You need not go back and do it. If you want to test for multiple values, you can always do that. There is a power animation also. I'll leave it that to you to explore. Under the test mean, there is another test called power of a test or power animation you can also do when you teach in the classes. Yeah, power animation is something for teachers, very powerful. Next animation. The second one, power animation. Under the test mean only, power animation is there. Okay, that's the test. Yeah, now that you open, just start dragging and dropping all those. Drag those values. No, you can slide it to the left side of it. Slide to the left of it. Hold the mouse there and then slide it to the left. Yeah, what happens to the power of a test? Very important. That's something 1 minus beta. We call it as power, right? 1 minus type 2 error. So you can play around with. Normally, we always assume that alpha is 0.055%. What if you change it? Not everywhere it is 5%. Especially in drug discovery cases, they look at the 25% because ICH guideline says that it's a 25% significance level. You have to choose that. So, but most of the times research, we believe in 5% significance level and 95% confidence level. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much for helping me out. We'll get on to the next test. T-test has 3 components. I said, univariate T-test, and then we'll do a bivariable, so-called testing between 2 groups, and then paired T-test. So we'll do quickly. I want to see the next question is, okay, let me share the screen. The next question is there any significant difference in the pain between 2 genders? Okay, that is, I have 2 genders here, male and female. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'll wait for a couple of seconds. It might take some time to pop up.
It's visible. It's visible.
Okay. So now you have 2 genders, male and female. Okay. Pain, here is the values. The question here is, just to summarize what we did last time, was test of mean 1 sample t-test. We did this. We checked for the normality first, and then we checked for 7.1. There was 7.1. There was a significant difference, but for 9.1, there was no statistical significant difference. Okay. So just these slides will be shared with you as well. So now the 2 sample t-test. Now we move towards 2 samples. There are 2 groups. One is the male and female. So we want to check, is there any statistically significant difference in the pain between genders, male and female? That's what we are trying to do here. So how are we going to do it? Simple. Analyze, fit y by x. Okay. Analyze, fit y by x. Again, keep that in mind. Pain should be normally distributed. Variable should be normally distributed. All your parametric test, normality is a must. Okay. So analyze, fit y by x. Okay. And then do the heavy lifting, take the pain, and then put the gender to X factor. This is what you're supposed to do. Pain to the Y response, X as a gender. Where did I go first? I went to analyze and then fit Y by X. because there are two variables now. Okay. So that's what I did. I went to analyze fit y by x, gender to x factor, pain to y response, and then you have to click OK. How many of you got this output? Take what the mean diamonds probably. So kind of this diagram will come first. How many of you got? It just plots the variables. Okay. How many of you got the output? Yes. I cannot take silence as yes in this case. Somebody has to speak, please. Yeah.
You got it, sir.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thank you so much. Then under the red triangle, do the t-test. Okay. There is something called pool t-test and t-test. Okay. Pool t-test is when you have unequal variances or it assumes lot many things. Okay. So we'll talk about this. Pool t-test is it assumes equal variance between the groups. T-test means assumes unequal variance between the group. Very important. There's a pool t-test and the t-test will do. We assume that the variances between the groups are unequal and we'll do a t-test here. Click t-test. You should get the output here. Something like this. What is the p-value?
Less than 0.05.
Why? That means what is your interpretation?
So there is a significant difference between the
Absolutely.
pain levels
Simple.
between gender.
Yeah. When it comes to pain, there is a significant difference in the average pain between male and female. What is greater, what is lower, you can see that male has a higher pain compared to female. There's nothing to do with it, it's just the data. Okay. Probably the perception of pain for male is higher than female. That's how I interpret. Okay. So we show off little pain more than female. That's what my mother keeps telling me. Okay. So look at the p-value and interpret. So we started with single or one kind of a variable t-test or from a univariate t-test. And then this is a two variable or else two group t-test. Okay. Now we'll move on to little bit of paired t-test. So here we had the two different groups, male and female. So we cannot do paired t-test using the same data. We'll use another data here. So what is that other data? Probably you would have received something called weight loss. Okay. This is a famous data. Weight loss. Okay. Let's try to do the pair t-test. Any questions in the one sample t-test and two sample t-test? Any questions?
Any question?
Any questions, please you can type it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask.
One sample t-test, two sample t-test.
Sir, in terms of if it is not normally distributed, then
Yeah.
Wilcoxon sign rank test you told.
Yeah.
So, in some of the cases, like for them to interpret that Wilcoxon sign rank test, in SPSS, we get it more as a qualitative thing. So it is there is no difference between the two groups. So how will be the output in JMP? Can we just see an example
Oh, yeah.
for Wilcoxon?
So for the same data, we'll try to put Wilcoxon test. Okay. Let's assume that data is not normal and then we'll try to put. Okay. So the best part is because I know it is normal, I click t-test. Okay. If you can see my screen, right? If I say that non-parametric, then I'll apply Wilcoxon t-test. It's the same interpretation. Okay. Interpretation wise, there is hardly any difference. It's just that you apply a t-test if the distribution is normal. If it is not normal, you apply non-parametric test. From an interpretation standpoint, there's hardly any change.
Because the regression of the mean, as you told, when n tends to infinity, t tends to z.
See that? Yeah. Here
Yeah.
we are looking at, so the interpretation, there is a small change. Okay. When you say, when we do the t-test, we are testing the averages. It's a test of means. Okay. But here we are testing the rank. This is where the small difference comes in. Okay. So it's a score. It's not actually the averages we are testing because you cannot test averages because it is not a continuous normally distributed distribution. So you cannot test the means because it is not normal. So then you go for rank median. You start looking at median of the distribution, or else the rank of the distribution, how the distribution is set up. Based on that, you have to interpret. So here, when we interpret in the t-test, the average value of pain, okay, will be different statistically. But when it comes to rank correlation or a median or a sign test kind of, the median of the distribution is statistically significant. Okay, the median value of pain between male and female. Okay, or the you cannot use the average when you use a non-parametric test. Simple as that.
And
So
usually, Dr. Muralidhar, we say that like if the standard deviation is more than 20% of the mean as a thumb rule, or if the sample is less than 30, usually it would be not normally distributed or it would be a non-parametric test.
you it doesn't make, see, I usually is fine. I don't know. I have to check with the data.
Hmm.
See, even if you have 5 responses, it can be normally distributed, right? If you're so -1, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Example, let's take only 5 values. It can be normally distributed. Okay, so the probability distribution could be, so the way 2930 comes into the picture when you differentiate between a t-test and a z-test. Okay, so when you calculate the standard error, that's where people differentiate between t-test and z-test. So t becomes z. Both of them are same when it comes to we call it as moments, right? First moment, second moment, third moment, fourth moment. So it's nothing to do with normality with sample size again. Okay, I don't see a strong any strong relationship between, based on the sample size. You just test whether the distribution is normal or not. I would put that as a standard golden thumb rule. You check for Wilk, Shapiro-Wilk, or else Anderson-Darling test. If the data says normal, go ahead with it. If not, apply non-parametric test. Straightforward question approach. Most of the biostats book also talks the same approach. The Trevor, which I refer normally, yeah, Bale, all those books, international books, they talk about this the similar approach. There is something called tending towards normal. Probably we'll have another discussion on that. Tending towards normal. If not normal, you can also make it normal and then apply parametric test, or else non-parametric test. So that's called transformation. We'll not get into that in this session. Okay, if it is not normal, can you make it normal? Okay, add little more samples. The way is one of the easiest ways. Keep taking multiple readings and then increase the sample size. When you increase the sample size, the distribution tends to be normal. That's an assumption we always make, but you never know if it is a binomial distribution, a Poisson distribution. It never makes it normal, adding the sample size. So test for it again, and then if it is normal, go for it. If not, transform the variable so that it becomes normal. There are some beautiful transformation techniques like log transformation, or else Box-Cox transformations. You take an inverse of that, or take a first derivative of it. There are a lot many mathematical and statistical approaches to try it out whether the variable can become normal or not. Even if it is not normal, you go for non-parametric test. Probably this would be my long answer for your short question, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
I know this problem we actually face in industry. We just take the transformations and then we make it normal and then we run all the regressions. Yeah. So even if you have a non-parametric test, you can find it out here only. If the variable is normal, do normal parametric test. If not, you go for non-parametric. It is there in the fit y by x only. All sorts of, you can see median test you want to do. It's a one-way ANOVA based on normal quantile score. So apart from mean, it starts testing other things. You can test for standard deviation. You can test for anything. For example, there are a lot many capabilities where you can apply non-parametric test. But the question is, what is your business objective or else your research objective? Yeah. Okay, so let's take the pair t-test. We did the univariate t-test. Okay, 2 sample t-test, and we'll do 2 pair t-test. It's one and the same, but you'll be the way it works little different because you'll be taking the measurements from the same individual. Okay, here is a sample of data. Open that weight loss data set. Can you open the weight loss data set? How many of you opened it? So this is before and after. 15 people after taking some weight loss program, whether exercise or whatever supplements or whatever you call it as. This was the before in pounds, and this is after. It's same individual. We are trying to understand here. So is there any impact of weight loss program? Okay, does weight loss program affects significantly in reducing the weight or not? Is that reduction is statistically significant? If not, is there any difference or not? That's what we are trying to do. So how we're going to do it is analyze. Okay, we have something called matched pairs. Okay, so this is under the specialized modeling. It is called matched pairs. Under the specialized modeling, it is called matched pairs. Click that. Then ID, you don't need any ID variable. Just drag and drop before and after here, paired response. Paired response, both the variables, you drag and drop it here. So once you drag and drop it, click OK.
Sir, your slides are not visible.
You're not even seeing my screen.
No, sir.
Oh, what happened all of a sudden? Okay, so now I think you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, sir, now it's visible.
Okay, so what I was doing is I opened the data set. I hope everybody has opened the data set here. And then I went to analyze, specialized modeling, matched pairs. This is for paired t-test. And then drag and drop both the before and after to the paired response. Okay. If you have other grouping variable also, you can drag and drop, or you're looking at before and after, and then click OK. You should get this output. How many of you got this output? Thank you, sir. It shared. Somehow it's my screen sharing is going on and off. What reason? I'm not sure. So how many of you got this output? So look at the p-value. Look at the p-value here. So there are a lot many things here. So if you think that your distribution is not normal, you have to do a sign test. Look at this. So option is here only because I didn't check whether my variables are normally distributed or not. Ideally, I have to start checking whether these two variables are normally distributed or not. Now I'll stop at this point. Can somebody share the screen and check whether before and after are normally distributed or not, the weight values? Okay. Quickly, that could be a good one. So look at this. The values are only 15. There are only 50 records here. You want to check whether the values are normally distributed or not before applying paired t-test. If not, I have to apply a non-parametric test called sign test. Okay, Wilcoxon or sign test we have to apply if the values are not normally distributed. Can somebody help me out in sharing the screen and then checking whether before and after values are normally distributed or not? Or else I can do it quickly. I will do it quickly for you. You just need to apply the distribution. Okay, analyze distribution. I'll put both the values here. Okay, click OK here, and then I'll go here. I'll put normal quantile plot here also. I'll check normal quantile plot here also. Looks like more or less normally distributed, but I'll fit a distribution here. Okay, and then I'll check goodness of fit. Yeah, looks like before is the weight before the program is normally distributed. I'll check weight after the program also. Continuous fit. Okay, fit normal, and then goodness of fit. Yeah, this also both before and after, both the values are normally distributed. Then only I can go for pair t-test. Please keep this in mind. Okay, so I'll save this here. And if you look at the data set, already the output has been saved for you, just FYI. Okay, and then do the matched pair test, you will get this result. Okay, how do you interpret the p-value here? Can somebody help me out? Looking at the p-value here. The P value is less than 0.05 or greater than 0.05?
Less than
So how do you interpret here?
0.05.
How do you interpret?
There is a significant reduction in the weight before the after treatment.
Yeah. So first P value, if you see, probability greater than absolute value of T value. You can see the T. This will say significant. That means there is a difference in the, there is an impact. Whether it is less or more, you have to see these two, next two. So if you see this probability T, okay, after, before, there is a reduction less than T. Okay, that is statistically significant. More than T, no, it is not statistically significant. So there is a significant reduction in the weight. It is not the increase in the weight. First thing it will give you, is there any significant difference? It doesn't give you the direction, or so-called the tail of the disc. We spoke about the left tail or right tail, right? So first it will say, hey, before and after program, there was a significant change. That's the word we use. Let's keep that way. There was a significant change in the weight. Whether it got increased, no. It's got decreased, yeah. Probability less than T. That is the left tail. So direction of your tail. So there is significant. So you need not choose whether to do one-sided or two-sided, right-sided test and all. So JUMP gives all the three: two tail test, left tail, and right tail test. So you accordingly you see on the name. It also gives you upper 95 and lower 95 for the differences. Any question here on the T test? So we completed three kinds of T test. I know I wanted to complete, but we are slow, but we want to make a mistake. So one sample T test, two sample T test, and pair T test. Mostly you might use all these three in your regular work, right? So next, these are a continuous variable, and there is an assumption that it has to be normally distributed. If it is not normally distributed, then you have to apply non-parametric test. Okay. So I have 35 minutes, 40 minutes. Okay, so I will take ANOVA and then I have to finish chi-square. So I'm sure how much I can cover chi-square, odds ratio, and relative risk. But I'll definitely want to cover ANOVA because the assumptions of ANOVA are very, very important from a research standpoint. I've seen some people missing it out when they publish in the papers, and it will get rejected also. I've heard. In fact, there was one conference in the international conference in MSRIT recently, and one of the papers, the reviewer said, no, you have not validated the assumptions of ANOVA. Can you check and then send me back? So that's what I heard. So let's do the ANOVA. ANOVA is an extension of T-test. If you have more than two groups, it's called ANOVA, called one-factor ANOVA, essentially. So in that case, we had only two genders, right? Male and female. What if you have an additional gender? You cannot do a T-test. ANOVA is nothing but test of means when number of groups are more than two. Assumptions, again, the groups have to be normally distributed and should have equal variances. This is where a second important thing, assumption, gets added to ANOVA. So they always look at this, whether the variances are equal or not. Question you ask me is, what if the variances are not equal? Something called Welch test. Either you do ANOVA and then do a diagnostic measure, so-called check for the assumptions of ANOVA. If the data is normally distributed and if variances are equal, then your ANOVA interpretation makes sense. If not, go for the Welch test. So this is an important thing in ANOVA. I hope everybody gets this, and we're going to do an ANOVA test now. So go back to the analgesic data set. Okay, so analgesic data set, we had that male and female gender, those are two categories. And then if you look at the drug, there are three types of drugs, A, B, and C. That means if I want to do a test of hypothesis, is there any statistical significant difference in the pain between the drug types here, A, B, C, that becomes an ANOVA because there are more. Get the point? Okay. So now we'll do the ANOVA. Just to summarize, okay, this is what the pair T test we did. Okay, look at the p value and the That's what we did. So we'll do a one-way ANOVA here. The question is there any statistical significant difference in the pain between different drugs? There are three kinds of drugs here. How are we going to do? We go to analyze fit y by x. Okay. Analyze fit y by x. Take the pain, put it onto y values. Take the drug, put it onto x factor. Okay. Y is your dependent variable, x is independent. And then click OK. Something like this you should get. How many of you got this output? Just gives you visual output. And then from the red triangular drop down, you select. If you think your data is normal, you select ANOVA. Okay, because we validated the data is normal. So I'll choose ANOVA. If you think if data is not normal, then go for non-parametric test. Simple. Median test, exact test, multiple comparison, all those options are available. Now that I know my data is normally distributed, I'll click on ANOVA. How many of you got this output now? How many of you got this output? Good to go? If not, I can show once again. How do you interpret that? Now look at the p-value. Okay, the ANOVA table. What is the p-value? Is it greater than 0.05 or less than 0.05?
Less than 0.05.
So p-value is less than 0.05. That means there is a significant difference in the pain across the drug types. Simple. Okay. Basic interpretation, not a problem. There lies a significant difference in the pain, average pain. This is what we are going to use. Average. It's a test of means. Mean is nothing but average. The average pain across the drug types. And if you want to do pairwise comparison, it never says that which one has a significant difference. So overall, collectively, when you consider all the three types of drugs, there is a significant difference. You can also do pairwise comparisons. Okay. Compare means there is something called pairwise student D test, all pairs Tukey HSD. Okay, if you have a control, this is called post hoc analysis in the literature. So you do the post hoc analysis based on it. So if you have anything you want to use each pairwise numericals, I use Tukey HSD mostly. Then it will give me, hey, which are the pairs which are statistically significant. If you click under the compare means all pairs Tukey HSD, then you will get this kind of output. Now just looking at this value, looks like C and A are statistically significant, but A and B and C and B are not statistically significant. Because the order difference report is what I look at. Or else you, even if you look at the connecting letter report, if you see anything okay different here, C and A are different. You can see this B, A, C. This is a common, so there's no difference. You can always see that. So if they're connected, then probably C and A are statistically significant difference here. So that's more from a pairwise comparison. Okay. If you stop here, then we are committing a big mistake in ANOVA. That means we have not understood ANOVA completely. One important thing after this is we have to check whether the assumptions of ANOVA are valid or not. There are two primary assumptions of ANOVA. One is normality of the data in each group. Okay, so either you use Anderson-Darling test or Shapiro-Wilk, check for the normal quantile plot of each group and check for normality. Now that we have already done that, normality is achieved here. Next is equal variances within group or equal within group variances. Test whether variances are equal. Unequal variance test, it is called Welch test. To check, we have to apply unequal variance test. Okay, so it is called unequal variance. Okay, test of equal variances. You're checking test of whether the variances are equal or not. How? It is called unequal variance test. We are going to do that. Where should we find that? Go to the red triangle. There is something called unequal variances. Equivalent, not the equivalence test. You click unequal variances test. So if you take your mouse there, it will give you test if the variances are same and provides a Welch test on the means for assuming that the variances are different. If the variances are different, you use the Welch. If variances are equal, then you go ahead and interpret with the ANOVA one. Click that, you should get this output. Here in the Welch test, it is called test of unequal variances. So that means a red triangle means because it's a test of unequal variances, if you get the p-value less than 0.05, that means variances are equal. Okay? The null hypothesis is variances are not equal. Because the p-value is less than 0.05, the variances are equal. That means now this data, whatever you interpreted from an ANOVA standpoint, makes sense. If not, you have to use these kind of tests. Okay, Welch test. So go and check any of the standard research papers. They would be they might be speaking about Welch test very frequently, or else could be another test there, just to check whether the variances are within the group variances are equal or not, because that's an important assumption, and I don't want you to forget that when you do ANOVA. Okay, check for normality. If not, then apply non-parametric test. The data is normal. You applied ANOVA. Check whether within group variances are equal or not. Okay. Any questions here? We'll quickly do chi-square test. Okay, in 15 minutes, and then we'll wind the session. Does that sound good? Chi-square test is not it's not based on the continuous variable. It is nothing to do with your normality or anything. It's test of proportions or frequencies, ratios. Okay, so the proportions, a test of frequencies or proportions. So that's what we are trying to do. Or a test of association also. Sometimes it's called chi-square test of independence, or okay. So to determine whether two categorical variables are likely to be related or not is what we are going to use chi-square test. Because they're categorical variables, there's nothing to do with your normality. You cannot check normality for a categorical variable, right? So we are looking at frequencies, proportions, and all those things. So that's where we are going ahead. So it's also called contingency analysis. We'll take an example here. This is a pretty old example. I keep using this for every time when I speak about the categorical data analysis, or so-called chi-square test. Okay, so here the question is, it's a hormone replacement therapy, HRT. Okay, the people who are using currently and the HRT usage, that means there are few people who are not at all using that particular therapy, and we are trying to understand the status. There's a status alive or dead, who are using it, who are not using it, what is the status. And there are so many people, close to how many, 25,000, 24,000 people, and this is a research data, and we are trying to understand, is there any association between HRT usage and status. Status means whether alive or dead. So that's something, yeah. And for HRT usage versus alive or dead. So both of them are categorical variables. Usage, you used it, you never used it. Status, dead or alive. Both of them are categorical variables. Based on the frequencies of those values, we are trying to understand And then is there any evidence that risk of death in women when they use HRT in relation to if they not don't use? We are also trying to understand the relative risk also. So there are two parts to it. Is there any evidence that the risk of death in women who are identified as currently using HRT in relation to those who have not used at all? So two questions. One is HRT impacts are associated with status. Yes or no, we have to, and then we also introduce something called relative risk. We'll try to understand both of them as well. So open the data set quickly. HRT jump. Okay. Open the data set HRT. How many of you opened it, please? Let me know. Can somebody share the screen? So open the data set. I will stop presenting it so that I want some of you to do it along with me. Repeated ANOVA. Yeah. So that's a good question. So repeated ANOVA. Yeah, good question. So it's part of analyze, okay, fit model. And there comes your under which I will show an example also now that somebody has asked me before. Let's complete the chi-square test and I'll show an example of repeated ANOVA. Is it MANOVA? It could be MANOVA also. You have multiple factors also that becomes MANOVA. You're taking the same measurement repeatedly over a period of time. Okay, how do you look at that ANOVA also? So we'll do that also if time permits. If not, we'll have an additional session. Yeah. MANOVA.
Santosh, can I request Santosh to share the screen, please?
Yeah, I just want you to help. That's it.
You have been made the presenter, sir. Santosh.
I was made, sir. Sir, sir, I do not have the JMP software, sir. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Because as I was working remotely, so yes, sir. I haven't installed. Yes.
Yeah. So probably you can download the evaluation copy for the short time, and once you are here for your retreat, which I have been told next week, we will give you the full software.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I was thinking to get it, sir.
Yeah. So currently you can download the evaluation copy and use it for a month or so. Once you are here, you can get the system software. Then in that case, like probably, sir, you can continue, sir.
Okay. So I will only share the screen now. Give me back. So the question you understood, right? HRT usage status. So it's a frequency data. Okay. So we're trying to understand chi-square test, and we'll also introduce relative risk. Okay. So in this example, you need to understand what is relative risk. You know what is relative risk? That's an assumption I make. I've already shared this slides. I can share the definition, all those things. How do you interpret? We can quickly talk through that also. And the relative risk when we. So it's a relative risk is the probability in the exposed group to the probability of unexposed group. It's a ratio. Okay, so probability of in the exposed group to the probability of unexposed group. Normally it is expressed as a percentage. Okay, so if there is no risk, if there is no difference between two probability, that means relative risk is equal to 1. If RR is greater than 1, means there is an increased risk of disease in the treatment group or the exposed group, treated group. Relative risk of less than 1 means there is a decreased risk. That's it. Okay. So because it's an absolute number, we normally convert into percentages. Okay. So it'll give you more than. So if a RR of 1.3 means, so relative risk of 1.3 means there is a 30% increase in the risk, okay, of a disease upon exposure to the risk factor of interest. If you look at what is the interpretation of 0.80, that means there is a 20%
reduction in the risk.
Reduction. The risk of outcome in the exposed group was reduced by 20%. How do you interpret relative risk of 3.6? If somebody gets a relative risk of 3.6, how do you interpret? 3.6 relative risk, RR. How do you interpret? .6 means 260%. Okay. 3.1 means no risk, right? There is no risk. So take out the 1. 3.6 minus 1 is 2.6. That is 260%. The risk of the outcome in the exposed group was increased by 260% relative to the unexposed group. So, or else, in other way, I also learned when I spoke to last time Professor Nandakumar was, there's a 3.6 times more likely to occur in the exposed group than the unexposed group. So some people use the number of times. Some of the standard textbooks use the percentages. So it's whichever way you want to interpret. So let's get back to, so you can, I think I can share the screen here. So we'll do the chi-square test here. Okay, so how do we do it? Go to analyze, fit y by x. Okay, and then take the status and then put it onto y response, and then HRT usage to X factor, and then count to frequencies. Okay, so you have all this count, and then click OK. So JMP will give you first mosaic plot, just a visual representation of your numbers from percentage perspective or probabilities perspective. And then contingency table. You can all customize your contingency table here. And then comes your test p-value. Okay. So Fisher's exact test is what we use it. Okay. We'll also do this. First thing is, so look at the p-value here. Okay. I hope all of you got the same output. So this is what we exactly did. Analyze fit y by x. Y is equal to status. X is equal to HRT usage. Frequency is equal to count. And then this is the output. Okay. Probably you would have got it. So any questions here? Look at the p-value.
Less than 0.05.
So how do you interpret this? So both the likelihood ratio and Pearson less than 0.05. How do you interpret that? There is an association which is statistically significant. This is how simply I can put that across. Okay. So it doesn't tell whether it will increase or decrease. We don't know the mortality, the direction of mortality. The first test will tell you, hey, there is a significant, statistically significant association. Okay. Don't use the word relationship, because relationship is beyond association. You have to add the causation also. That becomes a relationship. You have to establish through mathematical expression. That's a regression part of it. But we always use the word association. That means somehow HRT usage and mortality are associated. Okay, this is what significant influence on mortality in these women. Okay, so that's the first level interpretation. But we don't know the increase or decrease in the mortality. That's why we want to use relative risk. So once you get this output, under the red triangle, there is odds ratio also. I'm not going to touch base on the odds ratio today. I hope you know the same thing. It's odds ratio and relative risk are kind of climbing the mountain from two sides. You know, it's more or less, according to me, there is a small difference, but that's how you take the cab to Tirupati or else take the step to Tirupati temple. So it's more or less same in that way. So relative risk, click relative risk. And we are trying to understand here we want to understand whether the risk of death differs in the women who are currently using the HRT. So alive, instead of alive, I use dead, currently using, or else you can do all possible combinations for your relative risk. What is the relative risk of this against that, this against that? So, but my understanding or requirement is we want to understand what is the relative risk of being dead if you're currently using HRT. So I clicked here, this one, click OK, and then click OK. So now you get a relative risk of this value. So this is what we did now. When you choose relative risk, by default, both of them will be first choice will be highlighted. But I wanted to understand relative risk of being dead or currently using it. So now you get the output here. How many of you got this output? How many of you got this output? So if you look at a relative risk of 0.6 means, what is relative risk of 0.6? Okay, I've already interpreted here. Relative risk of 0.6. How many of you got this? That means there is a 40% reduction. 0.6 means there's a 40% reduction in the risk of being dead for those who are currently using HRT in relation to those people who never used HRT in that population. That means using HRT has a benefit advantage. Probably that's how I, as a layman's perspective, that's how we can interpret that. Any question here? I just extend that the chi-square test you do, obviously you're going to calculate odds ratio or relative risk. So you can calculate either of them, but their interpretation is little different. Okay. So any question here in the relative risk? Any question? Hopefully you're seeing my screen. Okay.
Yes, yes, it's visible.
Yeah. So some of the odds ratio information is also there. I'll share the slide. There was another example with retinal cell cancer, renal cell cancer, not retinal, sorry, renal cell cancer. This is also a standard research data. So this is the same thing. Instead of risk ratio, you choose odds ratio. Okay, risk ratio instead of risk ratio, you choose the odd ratio. So odd ratio interpretation is mostly, we can say, what is, how many times you see, what is the probability, how likely, that's the word we normally use, and how likely you see a smoker, or else how likely you see a cancer patient who might be a smoker. That perspective we use it. So that's the odds ratio part of it. I'll share this presentation as well with you. And just to give introduction to non-parametric test. So we said that we discussed most of the parametric test here. Okay. So here are the non-parametric test. If your data is not normal, use Wilcoxon. It is like a t-test using ranks. Okay. Kruskal-Wallis is like one-way ANOVA using ranks, because ANOVA is more than 2 groups. What is median test? What is Van der Waals test? Kolmogorov-Smirnov, Friedman rank test? This is like repeated measures ANOVA. If your data is not normal, you're going to use Friedman rank. This is the exact test. There's a sign test also. I missed it out probably here. So there are a lot of non-parametric multiple comparisons also you can go ahead. The interpretation more or less remain same, but you cannot comment on the average values here. So you have to use that. If you're using quantile based test, you should use quantile. If you're using median, you should accordingly interpret based on the median, not on the average, because average, is it ANOVA or a t-test, then only use averages, because they're all parametric test. There's hardly any difference. Instead of choosing ANOVA, you choose non-parametric test in the fit Y by example. That's it, because you know the data is not normally distributed. First, check for the normality. Keep that in mind. For ANOVA, equal variance test, Welch test is a compulsory. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Okay, so last 10 minutes. You want to do an exercise, or else you want to, I'm okay to take up some questions, whichever way you want. 4:30, right, madam? Supposed to wind up by 4:30, right?
By 4:30.
Yeah, so we have last 10 minutes. I want, I'll open up for the question and answers, or else anything specific, let me know. Okay, somebody asked me a question about ANOVA, ANCOVA, MANOVA, repeated measures. Okay, So that's all part of fit model. And we share the screen here. See, that's fine. So here is, for example, cholesterol data, which most frequently I use it. So you have you can see my screen, right? So you have treatment groups, 4 treatment groups here, and then April, May, and June, and you have 2 time measures here. Month is 1 time measure, and then day within that day, morning or evening, AM or PM is another factor we have taken, so that becomes MANOVA. And then you can do that using fit model, and then take out all this as a Y, and treatment becomes FX, and here you have to choose MANOVA. Okay, it has lot of options here. Once you run it, it'll give you, hey, whether it's repeated measure, sum, identity, polynomial, profile, mean, compounded. If you're looking at kind of interactions, you can do. So morning day 1, evening day, so those kind of interactions also compound you can do. If I do a compound, there are kind of 2 levels here. One is what time here, and here is my month. Okay, and I also want, yeah, let's do this. So this is what treatment, you can see that this is repeated measure. So if you Google repeated measures ANOVA jump, you will get Julian Paris video. You need not bother about that. Anything you can Google it out. At the same time, I did share the 1 minute, 1-page guide OPGs. It's also there in that. So you can verify that. There's a 1 minute video on the YouTube also. So this is how you interpret. There is an effect. I could see that. Look at both placebo and control. There on top, there is A and B. It's coming down. Okay, that the disease, and then you'll get a whole model compound. Is there any interaction of month as a time, and as well as you can see, I can also would have selected interaction of month and time also. Yeah, that's repeated measures. Any other questions? I'll take that as no questions. Hopefully you can see me, and any other questions? I'll wait for a couple more minutes. Any clarifications you want me to show, anything with respect to influential statistics, any specific thing, let me know. Just in case, let me, for those who came late, let me put my face to my name also. In case if you see me taking booster shot in your hospital, so you can remember me. I took a Ramaya only. But not the third. The booster is not. It started right. That's why I took it. Yeah. Next one, Ananda Kumar sir. Okay, so all the things videos might be already available, not only from Ramaya perspective, but it will be available on the Google also, some of the basic stuff. So please go through that material and data sets also. You can practice. If you see the data set, I've already saved the scripts so that you can practice once again in those data sets on the green color. So you just click, you'll get the output. So try to recreate that output. Yeah.
Any questions from anyone? There are no questions. I would like to thank Mr. Muralidhar for such a wonderful explanation. You took us through the whole process very well, sir, step by step, and all of us could easily understand how to use this JUMP software. And in case of any doubts, sir, can you share your mail ID? Is it okay if anybody has doubts, they can ask you and get back to you?
Yes. There are a few conditions before they ask me. They should have jumped on their desktop.
Yeah, what are those, sir?
The first condition is they should have jump on their desktop. Okay. They would have seen my videos before. Okay. Or else at least Googled out some videos of jump before talking to me. Okay. Then only I'll answer their question. Just kidding. Okay. So please do share. But that's a minimum requirement, right? If you don't have jump, how can I solve your problem?
So surely they will definitely have jump on their system. That's not a problem.
Before asking the question, try once again. If see the best part is jump is there from last 32 years. You know, if you have a question, just try typing in Google. Probably the same question somebody would have asked, and there's a jump community. There could be a video, 50 seconds video, 30 seconds video to do it, how to do it. If you don't find, definitely you can ask me. Yeah, just that. Yeah. Talking to me takes 3 minutes. If you do a search for a video, it takes 30 seconds. You can easily solve your problem. That's what I'm trying to say. But I'm here. Yeah, not a problem.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for your time and for patiently explaining to us. Thank you for accepting to, stepwise explain it to us, like that even a beginner can sort of, easily go through this and understand how to use this software. Thanks a lot, sir, from the college.
It's my pleasure, Professor. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah.
Sir, hopefully we'll collaborate again next year for some future workshops like these.
Absolutely. I'm here. I'm just a coffee away. Sorry, call away.
Sure, sir. I mean, we prefer to have an offline program because with the online thing, the participant feedback and all, there's like a little bit of a lag. I'm sure like next year when this COVID thing is, this Omicron thing is sort of settled, we can definitely have an offline training program wherein it will be much more interactive.
Yeah, I think the offline is always good because first thing is if you open a mobile, jump doesn't work in mobile. So you're not going to see me. That doesn't make any sense. And you cannot listen to me. So it'll be more productive, not only for you people, it'll be productive for me and from a time perspective. So I always prefer in person, whether it's pharmacy or it's engineering, any college, I always prefer in person. And if not, if because of the pandemic we are going online, but the request is ensure that people should have jump when they come to my workshop, and because listening to me doesn't make any sense because they have to do on jump and then they have to do actual analysis. So keep that as one requirement where yeah, if you're attending this workshop, even if you're doing online, the expectation is you can dial in through multiple devices, but one of them should be laptop so that you should have jump on their desktop. That's why I don't want to put people on spot. Hey, can you show me how to do it? Can you share the screen? Probably I would do that for graduate students when I do the workshop where I put them on spot and then say, because yeah, end of the day, it's learning is more important. Yeah, listening doesn't make any sense. We'll keep that in mind, Professor. Next time will you do it? Yeah.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks for participation, and then we'll meet in 2022.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a
Thanks.
Thank
great
you.
end of the year.